The engine's hum faded into stillness as the last of our belongings thudded onto the wooden porch of the new house. The town, nestled in a crook between looming mountain peaks, held the silence of a forgotten secret. I stepped out of the car, stretching limbs cramped from the long drive, my breath visible in the crisp air. "Jordan, help your mother out with those boxes," Dad called out, his voice disturbing the quiet like a stone rippling a still pond. I nodded, muscles already aching at the thought of more lifting, but it was the surrounding wilderness that beckoned me with a siren's call. "Let him take a break, Mark," Mom intervened, her soft tone wrapping around me like a protective cloak. "He's been cooped up all day." With a grateful glance at her, I stepped away from the familial duties and the scent of cardboard and dust. The mountain's shadow stretched over the town as if to lay claim to it, and I wandered beneath its touch, eager to explore the fringes where civilization gave way to wild uncertainty. The forest loomed, an ancient guardian of secrets, and I felt its pull. The trees stood like sentinels, their branches weaving a tapestry against the sky, and I found myself drawn to them. A chill ran down my spine, not from the cold, but from the excitement, laced with a hint of fear. As I ventured deeper, the forest closed around me, an embrace that seemed to breathe with unseen life. My footsteps were muffled by the undergrowth, and I could feel the thrum of the earth beneath my boots. Then I saw it, an overgrown path almost hidden by years of neglect. It wound away from the main trail, disappearing into the dense foliage. A weathered sign, half swallowed by ivy, warned against straying from the established route, but warnings were for those who feared the unknown, and fear had never been enough to quell my curiosity. I hesitated for only a moment before the path's mystery ensnared me completely. Each step led me away from the known world and deeper into a realm that whispered promises of discovery. The air grew thicker, scented with decay and the musk of damp leaves, and though reason nagged at me to turn back, something primal urged me onward. An inescapable pull tugged at my core, as if the path itself were alive and guiding me toward a destiny written long before my arrival. The forest seemed to watch, its ancient gaze heavy upon my shoulders. Yet I moved forward, driven by the relentless force of my own wonder, stepping into the shadows that danced just beyond the reach of the fading daylight. The path unfurled before me like a serpent, beckoning with its silent and sinuous appeal. I should have turned back, heeding the warnings that were etched into weathered wood and whispered in my mind's cautionary tales. Yet, each step I took was a note in an irresistible siren song, drawing me deeper into the heart of these woods where sunlight dared not linger. A shroud of mist began to rise from the earth, a ghostly exhalation, and with it came a change in the air, a chill that seeped into my bones and coiled around my heart. The forest grew denser, the trees now sentinels standing guard over secrets time had long ago buried in their roots. The path, once merely overgrown, now twisted into a labyrinth of gnarled branches and thorns that seemed almost deliberate in their placement, as if to ward off the unwelcome. I paused, listening. The silence was absolute, yet within it there stirred faint whispers, not voices, not quite, but echoes of something ancient, a resonance left behind by lives long since faded into the loam. That eerie chorus, murmuring indecipherable hymns, set my skin prickling with the awareness of being an intruder in a sacrosanct domain. Moonlight filtered in frail beams through the canopy above, casting shadows that moved with an autonomy that defied the stillness of the night. They flickered and played across the path as though the dark itself were alive, and I felt the presence of unseen eyes upon me, watchful, knowing, and patient. "Who's there?" My voice was but a whisper, a betrayal of the trepidation that welled up inside me. There was no reply, save for the mocking rustle of leaves in a wind that I could not feel. An involuntary shiver coursed through me, not from the cold, but from the creeping realization that this place held memories. It breathed with an essence not entirely its own, an amalgamation of the past that clung to the present. The silhouettes of twisted trees became specters, reaching out with claw-like branches, while the ground beneath my feet felt unsteady, as if treading upon the very fabric of history. Each echo, each movement of shadow, was a thread unraveling from the tapestry of this place, revealing glimpses of something altogether more sinister, a narrative woven with strands of dread. Jordan. The forest seemed to sigh my name, and I couldn't tell if this was a warning or a welcome. But one thing was certain, I was no longer a mere visitor in these woods. With every breath, every heartbeat, I was becoming part of its story, a tale that promised neither mercy nor escape. And despite the danger that I felt encroaching upon me with the suffocating inevitability of darkness at twilight, my curiosity blazed brighter still, an inextinguishable flame amidst the looming shadows. My footsteps crunched on the forest floor, a staccato beat in the otherwise silent night. The path ahead was choked with overgrowth, yet I pushed through, drawn by an unseen force that beckoned me deeper into the woods. With each step, I disturbed centuries of an undisturbed earth. Roots and leaves whispered secrets to the dark sky, as if my presence had stirred them from a deep slumber. It was then that I sensed it, a prickling on the back of my neck, the telltale sign of unseen eyes upon me. I paused, listening intently. The stillness of the forest seemed to contract around me, like the breath of something colossal and unseen. It was as if the very air had become a conduit for ancient malice, slipping through the leaves and winding its way around my limbs. I could feel it now, a malevolent presence awakening to my intrusion. It was subtle at first, a mere brushing against the edge of my consciousness. But with every heartbeat, it grew stronger, feeding off my mounting apprehension. There was no mistaking the intent behind this force. It was old, older than the trees that sheltered it, and it coveted the warmth of life that I carried with me. The moon hung low, a pallid witness to my trespass. Shadows twisted beneath its gaze, coiling and uncoiling like serpents ready to strike. They seemed to reach for me, elongated fingers grasping, trying to pull me into their inky embrace. A chill ran down my spine, not from the cold, but from the realization that these were no ordinary shadows. They pulsed with a hunger that was almost palpable. My breath quickened as I pressed onward, unable to quell the mix of excitement and dread that surged through me. The forest itself seemed to close in, the trees leaning closer, their branches creaking ominously. Each whisper of wind sounded like a hushed directive, urging me forward and sealing my fate with every step. The darkness clung to me, a second skin that I could not shed. "Who's there?" My voice came out barely above a whisper, betraying the tremor of fear that I fought to control. No answer returned, only the stifled laughter of leaves rustling against each other. Yet the silence that followed felt charged, brimming with anticipation for what was to come. I could feel it now, the eyes, more than eyes, a presence that observed my every move with predatory interest. It didn't just watch, it learned, discerned my fears, tasted my vulnerabilities like a connoisseur savoring a fine wine. And with each revelation of my innermost self, the force grew bolder, more insistent. There was a draw to this place, an inexplicable magnetism that compelled me to uncover its mysteries, even as I understood the peril such knowledge might bring. I was an intruder here, a living aberration in a realm of spirits and forgotten rites. The whispers grew louder, not in volume, but in intensity, and I knew they were meant for me, the boy who trespassed in a domain where the past never truly died. An owl hooted somewhere high above, its call a solitary note in the symphony of the night. Or was it a signal? a herald of something far more sinister that lingered just beyond the veil of visibility, waiting for the right moment to reveal itself. "Show yourself," I commanded, my voice steadier than I felt. But the darkness held its secrets close, and I knew then that my journey had only just begun. Whatever slept within this ancient burial ground, it was awake now, and it knew my name. The forest floor seemed to pulse beneath my feet, a heartbeat syncing with my own racing pulse. I stumbled forward, the pole of the path guiding me like a siren song through the gnarled trees. Their twisted limbs reached for me, grasping, as if trying to warn or ensnare. My breath fogged in the chilled air, coming in short gasps that did little to soothe the mounting fear constricting my chest. A shiver raced down my spine, not from the cold, but from the sudden onslaught of visions that flashed before my eyes, flickering and fragmented like a film reel possessed. Images of people, their faces contorted in terror, flickered against the backdrop of my reality. The ground beneath them stained a deep crimson, their screams silent yet deafening in the quiet of my mind. I clutched at my temples, willing the ghastly charade to cease, but the spirits buried in this unholy soil had found a conduit in me. Their stories became mine, whispered secrets that had clawed at the edges of my consciousness. A woman pleading for mercy, her eyes hollow mirrors of despair. A man's rage boiling over, his hands painted with the evidence of his sin. Children, their innocence torn away, swallowed by the shadows of cruelty. Each vision was a piece of a grotesque puzzle, assembling a history marred by violence and sorrow. I staggered under the weight of these revelations, feeling the very essence of the ancient burial ground bleed into my soul. It was as if its roots had wound around my ankles, anchoring me to its past, chaining me to its future. A profound sense of responsibility settled upon me with a crushing inevitability. This malevolent force that had slumbered here fed on anguish and silence for centuries. It sought release, and I had unwittingly turned the key. "Jordan," it hissed, a sound that was both alien and intimately familiar, as though it resonated from within my own fractured psyche. I could no longer deny the truth that screamed in the silence between my hammering heartbeats. This force, this entity born of forgotten atrocities, would not rest. Our souls were the currency it craved, and I, in my insatiable curiosity, had drawn its ravenous gaze upon us. "Stop," I uttered, the word a feeble shield against the dark tide surging forward. But it was all I had, a singular plea cast into the abyss of the night. I knew then, with a clarity that cut deeper than any blade, that I must find a way to confront this horror. If not, the blood of those it would consume would be on my hands, indelible stains upon my conscience. The moon, a sickly pale eye in the sky, watched impassively as I accepted the mantle of this grim crusade. With each step I took, retreating from the embrace of the forest, the resolve hardened within me. I would unravel the secrets of this place, and unearth the means to bind back the darkness I had awoken. The echo of my own footsteps through the forsaken corridors of the local archives was a grim metronome, counting down the moments left to us. Dust motes danced like mocking spirits in the shafts of light that cut through the gloom. My fingers traced the spines of ancient registers, their leather covers cracked and peeling like dry skin, as I sought answers among the dead. "Be careful what threads you pull at," croaked Mr. Darnell, the librarian, his voice a ghostly whisper that seemed absorbed by the musty air. His rheumy eyes followed me from his perch behind a fortress of paperwork, but he offered no further counsel. The records were cryptic puzzles, pages upon pages of obituaries and land deeds, baptisms, and curses scrawled in the margins by hands long turned to dust. As I delved into the town's history, the past unfurled before me like a sinister tapestry woven with tragedy and secrets soaked in blood. The burial ground was more than a resting place. It was a seal over something ancient and malevolent, a binding that I had unwittingly loosened. Each revelation, each fragment of lore gleaned from the crumbling documents, sent a chill down my spine. The tales were disjointed, but the essence of dread they conveyed was unmistakable. Beneath the foundations of this quiet mountain town lay an inheritance of darkness. "Those who wake the old powers seldom live to regret it," murmured Mrs. Kessler, one of the few remaining residents brave or perhaps resigned enough to speak with me. Her words slithered into my mind, rooting themselves like seeds destined to sprout nightmares. The price of my family's safety became a tangible thing, heavy upon my shoulders. Sacrifice. The word tasted bitter on my tongue, laced with the iron tang of blood yet unshed. It echoed in the hollows of my soul, a dirge for the innocence we had lost upon arrival. What would I have to give to rebind the shadows I had released? Who would pay the cost of my folly? The answers eluded me still, slipping through my grasp like smoke, leaving only the acrid scent of fear and the certainty that some prices were too steep to pay willingly. But the darkness did not relent, and the silence of the archives mocked me with the weight of centuries. The whispers of those long departed entwined around my thoughts, binding me to a fate I could no longer escape. There was no turning back from the path I had chosen. There was only a path forward. With each breath, the chill of the encroaching darkness clawed at my lungs. The town's lights flickered against the twilight, a dying heartbeat resisting the inevitable smothering embrace of the night. I plunged through the desolate streets, my footsteps resounding with a desperate urgency that was swallowed by the towering pines encircling the town. In my hand, the brittle pages of the ancient tome flapped wildly, as if seeking escape from their grim truths. The words of long-dead scholars, scrawled in fading ink, promised a solution steeped in ritual sacrifice. My mind reeled with incantations and sigils, each one a piece of the arcane puzzle that I had prayed would lock away the malevolence seeping from the forest's heart. The forest loomed over me, its threshold marked by an archaic stone gateway overgrown with creeping ivy. I hesitated, the knowledge of what awaited me beyond those gates warring with the need to protect those I love. The darkness had tasted our fears, it hungered for more. My family's safety hinged upon the success or failure of what I was about to do. "Jordan," whispered the wind, carrying with it a chorus of voices that were not voices, a cacophony of despair from the past. They knew my name, they knew my intent, and they were waiting. With a fortitude born of desperation, I stepped into the shadows beneath the canopy. It closed around me, a shroud woven from the very fabric of dread. The moon, nearly full, cast a pale light that seemed to mock my efforts with ghostly illumination. Each step forward was a defiance, a silent scream into the void that answered with chilling laughter. The path twisted, a serpentine track marred by roots that grasped at my ankles, as though the dead themselves sought to hinder my progress. The air grew thick, pressing against me with tangible malevolence. It was as if the forest itself breathed, exhaled whispers that crept under my skin, burrowing into my flesh. But I pressed on, clutching the book tighter, its edges biting into my palm. Every line I had scoured from those cryptic pages became a mantra, repeated until the words lost meaning and became part of the symphony of fear that orchestrated my advance. As I neared the heart of the woods, where the burial ground lay hidden like a festering wound, the very earth began to tremble. A gust of wind tore the pages from my grasp, scattering them into the night like carrion birds taking flight. Panic seized me, a cold vice that threatened to crush my resolve. Without those pages, without the knowledge they held, I was as good as dead. Yet it was the land itself that responded, the ground buckling and heaving as if some colossal beast had stirred within its depths. Trees bent and snapped, their sinewy limbs reaching out to ensnare me. The force I had awoken roiled with triumphant malice, sensing the nearness of its prey. Running now, I dodged and weaved through the labyrinth of destruction, each step breathing a sharp stab of pain. My heart thundered in my chest, a drumbeat heralding doom. The realization crashed over me with the weight of ages. My actions, my insatiable curiosity, had brought this upon everyone. The malevolent presence coiled around the town, like a serpent ready to strike. In the pit of my stomach, the icy tendrils of dread solidified into a dark understanding. All I had done, all I had sacrificed, was but a prelude to the horror yet to come. The darkness grew stronger, fed by the terror it inspired, an ancient entity reborn through my folly. I stumbled forward, the chill of the night clawing through my sweat-drenched shirt. The forest was alive around me, a symphony of creaks and groans, as though the trees themselves were in agony. My mind raced with the images of the past, each one a grotesque tapestry woven from the threads of my own undoing. The path was no more. It had become a twisted mockery of nature, winding like a serpent's back through the gloom. I could feel it, that malevolent force, slithering behind me, like an insatiable darkness that hungered for my soul. My legs trembled beneath me, each step an effort in defiance against the pull of the abyss. I could taste the metallic tang of fear in my mouth, sharp and overwhelming, but still, I ran. I ran because it was all I had left, a desperate flight from the inevitable. The moon cast ghostly shadows upon the ground, elongated fingers stretching out to grasp at my heels. I dared not look back, for I knew what lurked just beyond the veil of darkness, the culmination of my reckless pursuit for truth, and the punishment for my arrogance. The air grew colder, the breaths I took now ragged and uneven. The whispers swelled, an ancient chorus that bore down upon me with the weight of centuries. They spoke of torment, of vengeance, of a curse that would not be denied its due. A clearing loomed ahead, the burial ground bathed in an ethereal light that did nothing to dispel the terror that clung to it like a shroud. Here lay the heart of the darkness, the nexus of all that had come to pass. "No more!" I gasped, my voice barely audible over the din of my own pounding heart. I was at the precipice, the moment of reckoning that would decide all. There was no turning back, no reprieve from the horrors that awaited. With one last surge of will, I crossed into the clearing, the malevolent force roaring in triumph as it closed its grip around me. The visions came fast and furious now, a deluge of suffering and sorrow that pummeled my senses. And then, silence. Eyes wide with terror, I looked upon the ancient stones that marked the resting place of souls long forgotten. The air crackled with malevolence, the darkness palpable as it pressed in from all sides. Frozen in place, I could only watch as shadowy tendrils emerged from the earth, writhing and twisting as they reached for me. This was it, the gruesome end that had been written the moment I set foot upon that fateful path. As the shadows enveloped me, dragging me down into the cold embrace of the grave, this last chapter of my life closed with a final, chilling whisper. "Welcome to eternity."